Most men will never hear this truth. They think women fall in love because of luck, timing, or chance. They think it's about flowers, money, or fancy words. But here's the gut punch. Women don't fall in love with men for what they give. They fall in love with men for how they feel in their presence. And feelings, brother, can be triggered like switches if you know the psychology behind them. The harsh reality? 99% of men stumble around blind, asking questions that bore her, repel her, or make her feel like she's sitting in an interview. That's why she zones out, scrolls her phone, or tells you she's not ready for something serious. But the 1%, the men who understand these psychological triggers, don't just attract women. They haunt them. They become unforgettable. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how, if you're here, you're tired of wasting time. You've played the nice guy role, you've asked the safe questions, you've tried to get to know her like you're filling out a dating profile. And what did it get you? Nothing but lukewarm interest, polite smiles, and conversations that went nowhere. You want to know what actually makes a woman lean forward. What makes her eyes light up? What makes her feel like you're the man she's been searching for? It's not about looks. It's not about being the richest guy in the room. It's about psychological mastery. About asking the right questions in the right way that bypass her defenses and speak straight to her emotions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." The same is true for attraction. The questions you ask dye her perception of you. Ask shallow, weak questions, and she sees you as shallow and weak. Ask magnetic, emotionally charged questions, and she feels your depth, your presence, your strength. So let's strip away the illusions and dive into the 10 psychological tricks that make any woman fall in love with you. Starting with the first one, a truth so few men understand, but once you do, it will separate you from the herd forever. Point 1. The power of curiosity. The first psychological trick is this. Women fall for men who make them curious. Not men who give them every detail up front. Not men who talk endlessly about themselves. But men who plant seeds in her mind. Seeds that grow into obsession. Psychology explains it perfectly. Our brains are wired to crave closure. When a question is left open, when a story is half told, our minds itch for resolution. And women, more than anyone, are storytellers in their own heads. They don't just hear your words. They build entire fantasies around them. If you give her everything too soon, she gets bored. If you give her just enough to wonder, she invests. She imagines. And imagination is the birthplace of desire. Let me give you an example. Tom, 48, used to go on dates and dump his entire life story on the table within the first hour. His job, his family, his hobbies, his past relationships, everything. He thought honesty was the way to connection. But what happened? Women lost interest. They felt like there was nothing left to discover. When Tom shifted, when he started dropping hints instead of confessions, when he left pauses instead of over-explaining, women leaned in. They asked him questions. They wanted to know more. And suddenly the energy flipped. He wasn't chasing them. They were chasing him. Seneca said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." An unconquerable man doesn't feel the need to overshare. He knows his worth. He speaks with restraint, with intention. And that restraint creates mystery, and mystery creates attraction. Here's your takeaway. Stop thinking your value is in what you reveal. Your value is in what you withhold. Give her enough to taste your depth, but not enough to map your soul. Curiosity is the rope she uses to pull herself closer to you. Point 2. Ask questions that unlock her story. Here's a truth bomb most men never grasp. Women fall for men who make them feel seen. Not admired for beauty alone, not reduced to surface compliments, but seen for the story that shaped them. If you want to trigger emotions deeper than attraction, you have to ask questions that draw out her narrative. Why does this work? Because identity is built on story. Every woman carries scars, victories, and turning points that define who she is. And when you ask about them, not in a clinical way, but in a way that shows genuine presence, you signal something rare. You're not another man trying to impress her. You're a man who wants to understand her. That's intoxicating. Think of Adam, 52. He used to rely on the same boring small talk. What do you do? Where are you from? What do you like to eat? The result? Conversations that died faster than they started. But when Adam shifted to questions like, what's a moment that changed the way you see the world? Or, who was the person who shaped you the most? Everything changed. Women lit up. They leaned in. Because finally someone wasn't treating them like a profile card. Someone was pulling out the gold buried deep inside them. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Attraction isn't about filling silence with your voice. It's about creating silence she wants to fill with her own truth. The shift? Stop asking questions to keep the conversation alive. Start asking questions that make her feel alive. Because once she feels that, she'll connect those emotions to you. Point 3. Use contrast to spark emotion. Here's where most men fail. They keep conversations flat, safe, predictable. But attraction doesn't live in safety. Attraction is born in contrast, between light and dark, fun and serious, playful and profound. If every question you ask feels safe, she'll file you under forgettable. If your questions make her swing between laughter and depth, comfort and intensity, she'll remember you forever. The psychology here is undeniable. Emotional spikes create memory. Our brains tag moments of heightened emotion as significant. That's why you remember the first time you were in danger, or the first time someone made you laugh so hard you cried. When you mix contrast into your questions, you're weaving yourself into her memory, whether she realizes it or not. Let me give you an example. David, 46, once sat across from a woman and asked nothing but gentlemanly questions, polite, proper, surface level. The date ended with a handshake. No spark, no fire. Then he changed his approach. He mixed playful questions like, "What's the most rebellious thing you've ever done?" with deeper ones like, "What's a fear you've never admitted to anyone?" Suddenly the air shifted. She laughed. She blushed. She opened up. And weeks later, she told him, "I couldn't stop thinking about you after that first night." Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Your questions are the dye. Safe questions paint you beige. Contrasting questions paint you unforgettable. So here's the shift. Don't just keep the conversation alive, set it on fire. Dance between light and dark, between humor and vulnerability. Because when you make her feel everything, she'll start to feel something powerful for you. Point 4. The question that invites vulnerability. If there's one thing that bonds a woman to you faster than anything else, it's this: the courage to go beneath the mask. Most men are terrified to ask questions that invite vulnerability because they fear awkward silence or rejection. But the men who dare, those are the men women never forget. Why? Because vulnerability is intimacy. When you ask a woman something that touches her soul, you create a space few men ever offer her, the freedom to be raw. And when she feels safe enough to open up, that bond doesn't just create attraction, it creates attachment. Picture James, 50. On his dates, he used to skate on the surface. He thought keeping things light was the safe route, but safe is forgettable. Then one night, he looked across the table and asked, "What's something you've been carrying alone that you wish someone would ask you about?" She froze, her eyes welled up, and suddenly the entire tone shifted. She wasn't on a date anymore. She was with a man who saw her. That night led to something deeper. Not because he said the perfect line, but because he asked the dangerous question no one else dared. Seneca once wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there would be no end of them." In other words, life is too short for shallow talk. If you want a woman to feel something real, stop wasting her time with trivial questions. Give her the gift of depth. The shift? Ask the questions that make her heart pause. Not to manipulate her, but to free her. That's when you stop being just another man and become the one she can't stop thinking about. Point 5. The power of future projection. This one is lethal in the right hands. Women don't just fall in love with who you are now. They fall in love with the story they imagine with you. If you can ask questions that project her into the future, her brain starts building that story instantly. And once she's invested in that story, she's invested in you. Psychology calls this mental simulation. The mind doesn't just think about possibilities, it experiences them. So when you ask, if you could wake up anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would it be? Or, if we had one perfect adventure together, what would it look like? You're not just making small talk. You're planting her in a movie where you're the co-star. Take Chris, 47. He used to think showing his lifestyle would impress women. Nice car, nice apartment, expensive restaurants. It didn't stick. But when he started asking future projection questions, painting visions of road trips, lazy mornings, or bucket list adventures, women started telling him, I can already see us doing that. He didn't just attract them. He gave them a dream to step into. Marcus Aurelius said, a man's worth is no greater than his ambitions. When you guide her to imagine life with you, you're showing ambition without bragging. You're saying, I don't just exist, I create, and I can take you with me. The shift? Stop talking about what you have. Start asking about what could be. Because women don't fall in love with what's in front of them. They fall in love with what they can see with you in the future. Point 6. Questions that stir her values. Here's a truth most men overlook. Attraction without alignment is temporary. A woman may feel chemistry in the moment, but if your conversations never touch her values, she won't stick. Women fall hardest when they believe a man gets what drives them at the core. Psychology backs this up. Human beings are meaning-seeking creatures. We aren't just chasing pleasure, we're chasing purpose. And when you ask questions like, what do you believe life is really about? Or, what's something you'd never compromise on? You're not just talking, you're probing her foundation. You're making her reflect on who she is while sitting across from you. And when you're the man who holds the mirror, you become unforgettable. Look at Anthony, 55. He was tired of being seen as a fling. Women liked him but never stayed. Why? Because his conversations never went beyond lifestyle and attraction. Then he asked one woman, what's the hill you'd be willing to die on? She stared at him, stunned, because no man had ever cared to ask. That one question lit a fire. Weeks later, she told him, that's when I knew you were different. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Values aren't words, they're commitments. When you invite a woman to voice hers, she doesn't just feel close to you. She starts wondering if you share them. That's where true emotional bonding begins. The shift? Stop skating on the surface of hobbies and interests. Go deeper. Touch her values. Because when you align there, the attraction doesn't fade. It multiplies. Point 7. The dangerous allure of what if. If you want to stir obsession, here's the trick. Tap into the power of what if. Women are drawn to possibility like moths to flame. What if questions bypass logic and open the door to fantasy, playfulness, and unfiltered desire. Psychology calls this counterfactual thinking, the mental exercise of imagining alternate realities. And when you guide her through that exercise with questions, you create a world where the two of you exist in ways she hasn't dared to imagine. That world feels rebellious, intoxicating, and alive. Take Derek, 49, on a date. Instead of asking predictable questions, he leaned back, smirked, and said, what if we disappeared for a week and told no one? Where would we go? She laughed, then blushed, then spun an entire story. That night, she admitted, I couldn't stop picturing it. Why? Because Derek wasn't just talking. He was letting her imagination work for him. Seneca said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Most men waste it on safe conversations. The bold man dares to play with what if. That's the man who stands out. The shift? Don't be afraid to play impossibility. What if isn't childish, it's primal. Because when you unlock her imagination, you plant yourself inside it. And once you're there, it's nearly impossible for her to let you go. Point 8. Questions that reveal desire without saying it. Here's the move most men screw up. They try to show desire by being explicit, by making it obvious. But that's not how you ignite a woman's attraction. The secret is to hint, to weave curiosity and desire into your questions so she feels it without you forcing it. Psychology calls this the principle of priming. When you bring up topics indirectly, her mind fills in the blanks, and those blanks are charged with emotion. Instead of saying, "You're sexy," you ask, "What kind of touch instantly relaxes you?" Instead of asking, "Do you like intimacy?" you ask, "What's the difference between being wanted and being understood in your eyes?" These questions bypass defenses and pull her into a more sensual frame, without you ever crossing the line into creepiness. Think of Martin, 53. For years, he pushed too hard on dates, making comments that killed the vibe. Then he shifted. On one night out, he asked a woman, "What's one way someone could make you feel safe and wild at the same time?" Her reaction? A pause, a smile, and eyes that lingered. She later admitted, "That question stayed in my head for days." He didn't force anything. He let her mind seduce itself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Attraction works the same way. The quality of the questions you ask plants thoughts in her mind, and those thoughts build emotions tied to you. The shift? Don't shove desire in her face. Invite her to feel it, imagine it, and own it. Because when desire feels like her idea, that's when it becomes unstoppable. Point 9. The bond of shared secrets. Every man wants to be unforgettable. Few men know how. Here's the truth. Women never forget the man they shared a secret with. Why? Because secrets are intimacy distilled. When two people exchange something hidden, it forges a private bond, a world that no one else shares. Psychology calls this the intimacy accelerator effect. When you trade secrets, you fast-track closeness by bypassing layers of formality. And the beauty is, it doesn't have to be a dark, heavy secret. It could be playful, silly, or profound. The point is exclusivity. You've created a we against the world. Take Stephen, 56. On a second date, he leaned in and said with a grin, "Tell me one thing you've never admitted on a first date before." She hesitated, laughed nervously, then confessed something small. He responded with his own light-hearted secret. By the end of the night, she said, "I feel like I've known you forever." That wasn't magic. That was psychology. Seneca said, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood." Secrets unlock that. When she feels you understand her hidden layers, she doesn't just feel attracted, she feels connected. The shift. Stop keeping the conversation in the public zone. Create the private zone. Trade secrets, guard them, build that world together. Because in her mind, the man she shared her secrets with is the man who owns her trust. And trust is the seed of love. Point 10. The silent question. Can she feel your presence? Here's the ultimate psychological trick, the one most men never even consider. It's not about the words you say. It's about the question you never have to ask. The question her body, her heart, and her instincts answer the moment she sits across from you. Can she feel your presence? Most men think attraction is built on clever lines or rehearsed questions. Wrong. Attraction is built on energy, on the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you look her in the eye without flinching. A man who is fully present doesn't need to ask, "Do you trust me?" She feels it. He doesn't need to ask, "Do you desire me?" Her body answers it before her words ever do. Think of Robert, 58. He used to overcompensate, filling silences with chatter, cracking nervous jokes, trying to prove he was fun. But when he stopped, when he embraced stillness, slowed his breath, locked into the moment, everything changed. Women leaned into his quiet. They confessed more. They felt safer. They felt drawn. Why? Because presence is the loudest question you'll never ask. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." When you master that, you don't just retreat into yourself, you radiate outwards. Women sense it instantly. It's rare. It's magnetic. It's unforgettable. The shift? Stop thinking in terms of lines. Start thinking in terms of being. Because the greatest psychological trick isn't verbal at all. It's the unspoken gravity of a man who knows who he is. So here's the truth, brother. Love isn't luck. Attraction isn't magic. It's not about memorizing tricks or parroting lines. It's about mastering presence, depth, and restraint. It's about asking the questions other men are too shallow, too scared, or too distracted to ask. And it's about becoming the kind of man whose silence speaks louder than most men's best words. Women don't fall in love with noise. They fall in love with signal, with clarity, with a man who doesn't just ask questions but awakens something inside of them. That's the difference between being a man she forgets tomorrow and being the man who changes her life. Remember what Seneca said, "Life is long if you know how to use it. Don't waste it on weak talk and shallow games. Use it to master the art of depth, presence, and psychological truth. Because once you do, you won't just attract women, you'll command their devotion. Now it's your turn. I want you to lock this in. Drop this phrase in the comments right now. Presence over words. Write it, own it, live it. Because that's the principle that separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. And if this resonated, if you felt the weight of these truths in your chest, then join the brotherhood. Hit that subscribe button, share this video with the man who needs it most, and keep sharpening yourself every single day. Because love isn't given, it's triggered. And the man who knows how to trigger it, through presence, mastery, and depth, becomes the man she can't let go of.